Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Dina. I have a paralyzing fear of public speaking. It'll be okay though. I also used to have paralyzing fears around food, germs and contamination, forgetting to tap my leg 3 times if I thought about something scary, and having to wear anything but loose-fitting clothing. But I've gotten past all of that. So if my voice and my hands shake a little bit, I'm sorry. Recovery taught me that the best way to overcome fear is to challenge it. So here I am. Even though I'm scared, I am immensely grateful for the opportunity to be able to stand up here today and share a little bit of my story. I've struggled with OCD for most of my life, was diagnosed with anorexia and orthorexia in 2013, then later diagnosed with chronic depression, body dysmorphic disorder, and social anxiety. My story is one that probably sounds familiar. I was relentlessly bullied in high school for my appearance, and once I moved across the country on my own for college, my disordered eating turned into an eating disorder, which I would then go on to struggle with for the next 4 years. I don't want to use the cliche, if you had told me X amount of years ago that I'd be standing up here and talking about this, I never would have believed you, but I mean really, I never, ever would have believed you. I was anti-recovery for so long, and I swore that I would never become who I am today. Self-help books seemed like scams. Meditation was a load of BS. When I heard people talk about recovery or body acceptance, it made me angry. I would tell myself that they only recovered from their eating disorder because they looked a certain way, or that they were lying to themselves about doing well, or that they were being paid to say it, or that they had a deep need for attention and validation, and that's why they were acting like recovery was possible. Honestly, some of you might be thinking the same thing about me right now, and that's okay, but I'm not being paid to do this. Before my intake appointment at ERC, I promised myself that I wouldn't become brainwashed like the other people who go to treatment. I was next level cynical about recovery. My first month at ERC was difficult. I lied in my intake appointment to be put in a less intensive level of care than I needed, refused to drop my college classes, and I would tell the therapist that I knew that they didn't actually care about me and that they were there because they're paid to be. I promise that's not why your clinicians are at your treatment centers. I reached a breaking point when my chronic physical illnesses flared up and overwhelmed me more than I could handle. I have lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and fibromyalgia. The stress of trying to balance college, physical, and mental health was too much. My doctors guaranteed that focusing on my mental health would improve my physical health, and that's when I took the first real steps towards fighting my mental illnesses. I started to use NEDA's helpline, sent my family pamphlets from the website so that they had some grasp of what was happening in my head, and most importantly, I confessed my suicidal ideation to my treatment center and my family. I was sent to inpatient care and then returned to ERC for the next 6 months. In treatment, I learned the coping and distress tolerance skills that I still use today. I met clinicians who helped me save my life, like my incredible former therapist, Nicole, and my dietitian, Kate, and I formed connections with people who I still love and trust, and realized that no recovery journey or eating disorder looks the same. I learned how to accept the loneliness of having nobody around me, give or take some, understand balancing autoimmune diseases with mental illness. For the sake of brevity of what could be its own speech, I unfortunately went into treatment debt, had to discharge from ERC, and I needed to move across the country during my senior year of college to live with my parents. Although my mom, dad, and brother really stepped up to support me, it was still very sudden and rough. I started to lose motivation and hope watching my friends live the life that I wanted to have. I was no longer graduating on time. I couldn't have a job with my unstable health, and I had to miss out on what felt like everything in order to do what was best for my recovery. I was halfway through reaching strong recovery at this point, and it was the most lonely and challenging part of it. At that point, I had a decision. I could accept and cope with my reality, or I could attempt to control it using unhealthy behaviors. So I loosened the grip on the original promise that I made to myself, and I surrendered to recovery. I started going to the library or bookstores to read self-help books and survivor memoirs for hours almost every day. I painted whenever I felt like engaging in behaviors. I cut off toxic relationships, journaled every day, set firm boundaries in my relationships, and yep, I even started meditating. A few months later, after 2 traumatic IOP treatment experiences for OCD and BDD in California, I hit rock bottom again. Instead of giving up, I made a new promise to myself that I wouldn't stop until I found out what it felt like to feel better. I treated myself using workbooks and online lessons. I rode all of the uncomfortable waves, and 8 months later, I was back in Chicago as a full-time student, no longer had to see my dietitian, had a therapist who I trusted with my life, and I felt a love for life that I had genuinely never felt before. I still had plenty of work to do in my recovery, but the worst of it was over. And now, almost 3 years since starting recovery, I'm really okay. If I could leave you with any advice, it would be this. Don't be discouraged if your journey doesn't look like someone else's. I used to balance my eating disorder recovery with my lupus treatment. My dietitian put me on exercise restriction, while my rheumatologist would tell me that the only way that I could avoid harsh medications would be to exercise. I had plenty of doctors tell me that if I just lost a little bit of weight, that I would be seeing major improvements in my disease. The next day, I'd be back at my treatment center, feeling envious of the people who didn't have to deal with competing treatment plans. But at the same time, everyone else was also going through something on their own that I couldn't understand too. Remember that your mental health is equally as important as your physical health. Don't give up on finding a therapist that you really click with. It's important to have someone who you feel like you can be yourself around and who you trust. And when you want to give up, remember why you started. No matter who you are, what you look like, or where you came from, you deserve recovery. I'm so sorry if the society so close. If the society that we live in and the damaging stereotypes of eating disorders have ever made you feel invisible, ignored, or unimportant. Your struggles are valid and just as real as anyone else's. So now, a new promise. Let's swear that we won't stop talking about the fact that eating disorders of any kind can affect people of any gender, size, race, and age until those who suffer in silence feel safe asking for help. Let's be allies in creating space for people who feel out of place in the recovery community as it is today by listening to and believing their experiences. For all of the cynics, the people who are losing hope, the ones who have to recover differently because of their physical health, the people who feel alone, who keep getting knocked down every time they get up, and the ones that think that they're just a lost cause, I hope that I made you believe, even just a little bit, that you can find strong recovery. I was all of those people at one point or another, and I really, truly, wouldn't lie to you, genuinely had my life changed for the better by choosing recovery, and I hope that you can too. Thank you.